Worry is like a fog that settles over the heart. It clouds our vision, weakens our spirit, and convinces us that we are alone in facing the storms of life. But the truth is this: we were never meant to carry the entire weight of the world on our shoulders. There is a strength greater than ours that moves silently through our days, a loving presence that guides us even we worry often begins as a small thought that we allow to grow, and before we realize it, that thought has taken control of our mood, our decisions, and even the way we see ourselves. The mind tends to cling to possibilities that have not happened yet, to problems that are not ours to solve, and to outcomes we cannot predict or influence. When we carry what we cannot control, we are draining the energy that could be used to act, to create, to heal, and to move forward. This invisible weight can become so familiar that we mistake it for a part of who we are, but it is not. It is something we are holding on to, and anything that is held can be released. Releasing worry is not passive. It requires courage to recognize the difference between what is within our capacity and what is beyond that. Many times we worry because we believe that constant thinking equals preparation, or that anticipating every outcome protects us. Yet worry rarely prepares us, it paralyzes us. It is like running a race while gripping heavy stones. We may still move, but slowly, painfully, and with less clarity. Imagine how much lighter your steps would feel if you put down what was never meant to be carried in the first place. Letting go starts with awareness. When you catch yourself spiraling into anxious possibilities, pause. Ask yourself whether the situation is something you can influence directly in this moment. If the answer is yes, take one concrete action, however small. Action breaks the cycle of overthinking. If the answer is no, then recognize that holding on to the worry will not change the outcome. In that moment, the most powerful thing you can do is to release the mental grip and return to what is real, what is present, and what is within your reach. There is a difference between responsibility and control. Responsibility means showing up with effort, consistency, integrity, and love. Control is the illusion that with enough fear or pressure we can force life to obey our expectations. But life is not meant to be forced, it is meant to be lived. When you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you reclaim your inner space. Peace doesn't arrive by accident. It arrives when we stop scheduling our thoughts around fears that may never materialize. This release is not about indifference, but about wisdom. It is not about giving up, but about giving yourself the freedom to work with what life offers instead of fighting against what it withholds. When you stop carrying unnecessary worries, your mind becomes clearer and your heart feels lighter. You begin to notice opportunities you once overlooked because fear was taking up all the room. Releasing worry is not a single decision made once. It is a choice we repeat each time fear knocks. With practice, you begin to trust that your strength grows when your load becomes lighter, and that letting go of excess worry is the first step toward discovering how much more you are capable of. Trusting in God is often misunderstood as a promise of a smooth path, a guarantee that difficulties will dissolve or that life will unfold according to our expectations. Yet trust does not function as a shield against adversity. It acts as a companion through it. Challenges are an inevitable part of being alive. They shape character, refine purpose, and reveal strengths that remain hidden when everything flows effortlessly. What trust transforms is not the presence of obstacles, but the inner posture with which we face them. When you trust in God, you no longer walk forward wondering if you are abandoned in your struggle. You step into each moment with the quiet confidence that you are supported, guided, and accompanied, even when the path is steep or or unclear. Fear often arises from the illusion of isolation. When we believe we must rely solely on our own limited understanding, every setback feels overwhelming. The mind begins to catastrophize, building worst-case scenarios that paralyze action and steal joy from the present moment. Trust interrupts that cycle. It reminds you that you are not navigating life alone, that there is a wisdom beyond your own working in ways you may not yet perceive. This shift in perspective does not magically resolve problems, but it reduces the emotional burden of facing them. Instead of thinking, I must handle everything, you begin to say, I will do my best, and I am not alone in this. This change is subtle but profound. The heart softens, the mind clears, and resilience grows. You may still feel the weight of responsibility, but you do not carry it as a crushing load. Trust gives you permission to breathe. It allows you to rest without guilt, to seek help without shame, and to acknowledge that strength is not the absence of struggle, but the ability to rise despite it. When you trust in God, challenges become teachers rather than threats. You start to ask different questions. Not, why is this happening to me? But, what is this moment shaping within me? This shift does not erase difficulty, but it transforms suffering into growth. In moments of uncertainty, trust can feel like stepping into the unknown without a complete map. But that is precisely where fear begins to lose its grip. When the foundation beneath you is faith, you no longer demand certainty in order to move forward. You become comfortable taking the next step without seeing the entire path. The future stops feeling like an enemy to defend against and becomes a journey to walk through, one step at a time. Trust is not passive resignation. It is active surrender, a willingness to move ahead while allowing something greater than your own fears to lead. Life will still challenge you. People will disappoint, plans will change, and some seasons will feel heavier than others. Yet with trust, the heart learns to endure without closing, to hope without demanding guarantees, and to persevere without collapsing under pressure. The absence of fear is not achieved by eliminating all difficulties, but by knowing you never face them in isolation. Worry has a way of shrinking your world, narrowing your vision until all you can see are the risks, the doubts, and the reason something might not work. It takes your imagination, one of your greatest inner resources, and uses it against you. Instead of envisioning possibilities, worry projects failure, disappointment, and danger. When this happens repeatedly, opportunities that once seemed within reach begin to feel distant or unrealistic. You hesitate, you postpone, and eventually you convince yourself that trying is too risky. In this way, worry silently closes doors without ever needing to touch them. It limits not only what you do, but who you believe you can become. Faith, on the other hand, invites you to look beyond immediate fears and into the potential waiting on the other side of uncertainty. It expands your perspective. Instead of focusing only on what could go wrong, faith asks, what if something goes right? What if your effort matters? What if the path opens as you move? When you shift from worry to faith, your imagination becomes an ally again. It begins generating possibilities instead of obstacles. You start to notice chances you once ignored because you were too preoccupied with what might fail. Faith doesn't erase the unknown, but it helps you step into it with curiosity rather than dread. Worry fuels hesitation, faith fuels action, and action is where transformation begins. When you choose faith, you are giving yourself permission to take steps, even when you don't have every answer. You learn through movement instead of stagnation. Each step forward, no matter how small, builds confidence and creates momentum. As you move, paths appear that you could not see from a distance. Possibilities unfold, not because they were absent before, but because fear was blocking your view. Faith allows you to lift your eyes and see farther. There is also a psychological shift that takes place when you lean into faith. Worry places your attention on outcomes you cannot control, leaving you tense and reactive. Faith brings your focus back to effort, growth, and presence, the things that are within your reach. This shift restores your energy. You stop exhausting yourself trying to predict every scenario and begin investing that energy into meaningful action. The world feels less threatening and more open when you stop trying to control what hasn't happened and start engaging with what is happening now. Possibilities often require a sense of inner spaciousness. When your mind is crowded with worry, there is little room for new ideas, fresh insights, or unexpected opportunities. But when you cultivate faith, especially in moments of uncertainty, space opens within you. That space becomes fertile ground for creativity, resilience, and clarity. You become more receptive to guidance, more aware of intuition, and more willing to listen to the quiet voice of hope that worry once drowned out. Choosing faith does not mean ignoring reality. It means refusing to let fear be the only voice shaping your choices. It means recognizing that every meaningful journey begins with a step that faith has encouraged and worry has resisted. When you trust enough to take that step, your world expands, doors unlock, and the life that once felt distant begins to feel possible again. When you look back on your life with honesty, you will find moments where you believed you had reached your limit, times when circumstances felt heavier than your strength, when uncertainty clouded your path, and when hope seemed faint. Yet you are here, reading these words, because something within you refused to give up. This history of endurance is not just a collection of memories. It is evidence. It shows that you have already faced storms you once feared would break you, and you emerged with greater resilience than you imagined. These past victories are not accidents or coincidences. They are reminders that you have been guided, supported, and strengthened at the exact moments you needed it most. Strength often appears quietly. You may not notice it while you are struggling, because in those moments your attention is fixed on survival rather than growth. It is only afterward, when you reflect and realize how far you have come, that you understand how strong you actually were. Sometimes support arrives through people, through unexpected opportunities, or through an inner courage you didn't know you possessed. Other times it shows up in the stillness of your heart, in the intuition that tells you to take just one more step, or in the inexplicable peace that calms you when logic says you should be overwhelmed. No matter how it appeared, support was present, and recognizing that truth allows trust to grow. Trust strengthens when you connect your past struggles with your present challenges. The same resilience that carried you before continues to live within you. When facing new uncertainties, it is easy to forget this and believe you are starting from zero. But you are not beginning again as the same person. You move forward with the wisdom earned from past hardships, the clarity gained from past confusion, and the strength gathered from past battles. The more you acknowledge, the more grounded your trust becomes, not in wishful thinking, but in lived experience. Every time life tested you, something within you expanded. You became more capable of understanding others, more patient with yourself, and more aware of what truly matters. These are not small achievements. They are signs of inner transformation, and they serve as anchors when new difficulties arise. When you remember how many times you have risen before, you start to approach challenges differently. Fear loses some of its power. because you recognize that the presence of difficulty has never meant the absence of support. This understanding does not mean challenges become painless. It means they become navigable. Each obstacle becomes an opportunity to rediscover your strength and deepen your trust. When you face a situation that seems overwhelming today, remind yourself of who you were during your past moments of struggle. A person who may have doubted, cried, or felt lost, yet continued anyway. That perseverance was not random, it was guided. When you acknowledge the invisible support that carried you then, you open your heart to receive it now. Your history shows that you have never walked alone. Trust grows each time you recognize the pattern. When the weight became too much, strength appeared. When you could not see the way forward, clarity emerged. When you thought you had reached the end, a new beginning unfolded. You are guided, you are supported, and the resilience within you is not temporary. It is a companion that continues to walk with you into every new chapter of your life. The questions we ask ourselves shape the direction of our thoughts, and the direction of our thoughts shapes the direction of our lives. When fear dominates the mind, the first questions that rise are filled with doubt. What if this goes wrong? What if I fail? What if I am not enough? These questions pull energy away from action and focus it on imagined disaster. They convince you to stay still, to delay decisions, or to accept less than what you are capable of. The future becomes a threat instead of an invitation. Yet this fear-based questioning is not the only way to think. By shifting the questions you ask, you also shift the emotional climate inside you. When you start asking, what if things turn out right? What if this decision opens a new path? What if this challenge is shaping something beautiful within me? You invite possibility back into your life. The future becomes a space of potential rather than danger. Changing the question does not mean ignoring risks. It means refusing to let fear be the only voice guiding your decisions. When you ask what could go right, you are exercising the muscle of hope, which many people forget they possess. Hope is not a naive optimism. It is the recognition that our outcomes are not predetermined and that your actions matter. It encourages you to take steps even when uncertainty remains, because progress becomes more important than perfection. The shift in thinking cultivates courage. Instead of waiting for guarantees, you begin to move because you trust that clarity often comes after action, not before it. This perspective also changes how you feel in the present moment. Worry contracts your world and drains your energy, while hope expands your inner space and restores motivation. When you imagine positive outcomes, your body responds with calm, your mind becomes clearer, and your motivation strengthens. You begin to notice ideas and opportunities that previously went unseen. It is not that those opportunities were missing. Rather, your attention was too fixed on danger to recognize them. The mind can either be a magnifying glass for fear or a lens for possibility. The choice comes from the questions you ask. Shifting toward positive possibilities is not about pretending everything will be perfect. It is about acknowledging that the future holds more than one path. When you only dwell on what might go wrong, you paralyze yourself. When you open your thoughts to what might go right, you give yourself permission to step forward. Many of the most meaningful changes in life begin with a single brave question. Someone wonders, what if I try again? What if I learn something new? What if I trust myself enough to take this step? That question becomes a spark, and action turns the spark into light. Your past is full of moments where things turned out better than you expected. Sometimes outcomes unfolded slowly, sometimes unexpectedly. But again and again, life revealed possibilities you could not see at the beginning. By remembering this, You strengthen the belief that hope is not foolish. It is a form of wisdom that understands the limitations of fear. Asking what could go right is an invitation to grow, to explore, and to trust that the future holds more than your worries suggest. It reminds you that every journey worth taking begins with the courage to imagine a positive outcome and the willingness to walk toward it. Transformation begins where inner choice meets consistent practice. When you choose trust over anxiety, you initiate a shift that is not visible at first glance, yet it gradually reshapes the way you experience life. Anxiety often arises from the belief that you must control every detail, anticipate every outcome, and protect yourself from every possibility of loss or failure. This constant vigilance drains your emotional reserves. It keeps your mind racing, your body tense, and your heart closed. But when you begin choosing trust, even in small moments, you interrupt that cycle. You allow your nervous system to rest, your thoughts to slow, and your emotions to breathe. That pause becomes the first step of transformation. Trust changes your inner landscape because it frees your attention. Instead of being consumed by worst-case scenarios, you start focusing on what you can build, how you can grow, and what you can appreciate. This shift in focus does not happen all at once. Often, trust begins as a whisper rather than a declaration. It might sound like, I don't know how this will unfold, but I will take the next step anyway. Over time, every moment where you choose trust strengthens the pathway that leads away from anxiety. The space once filled with fear begins to fill with clarity, creativity, and resilience. You start noticing that you are less reactive, more thoughtful, and more capable of navigating difficulty without collapsing under its weight. The transformation also becomes evident in the way you relate to uncertainty. Anxiety demands certainty before action. Trust allows action even when certainty is unavailable. When you no longer require every answer in advance, you start moving forward with intention instead of hesitation. Progress becomes possible because you are not waiting for fear to disappear before you begin. Each small act of movement reinforces the belief that you can without knowing everything. The unknown loses some of its intensity because you are no longer staring at it through the lens of fear, but walking through it with a sense of grounded confidence. Your relationships change as well. Anxiety often pushes people away or makes communication strained because fear narrows your perspective and heightens sensitivity. Trust softens that edge. It opens the heart, allowing you to listen more deeply and express more honestly. You become more present with others because you are less trapped inside your own thoughts. People feel this shift, not because you announce it, but because your presence becomes calmer, steadier, and more genuine. When others sense your trust, they often feel safer around you, which deepens connection. Most importantly, choosing trust over anxiety transforms your relationship with yourself. You begin seeing your own capability not as something conditional or fragile, but as something steady and dependable. Mistakes become opportunities to learn rather than reasons to retreat. Setbacks are no longer signs of failure, but invitations to grow. Little by little, your inner dialogue changes. The voice that once said, I can't handle this, becomes, I have faced difficulty before, and I can meet this moment too. Transformation is not about eliminating every trace of anxiety, but about recognizing that trust can coexist with uncertainty and still guide you forward. In the end, life is not asking you to be fearless. It is asking you to be faithful. Every day offers a choice between carrying the weight of worry or walking with the quiet confidence that you are guided, supported, and never truly alone. When you release what you cannot control and trust in what is greater than your fear, something remarkable begins to unfold within you. Your steps grow steadier, your heart grows lighter, and your spirit becomes stronger. So breathe deeply, lift your gaze, and move forward with trust. The path ahead may not be fully visible, but you will not walk it empty-handed.